With Street Fighter 6 just around the corner, I decided it would be fun to take a look back at the previous metas for the game. This retrospective analysis will be taking into account my perspective of things. It's not going to encompass the general conclusions that people had at the time and maybe even now about the previous season's metas. And that's just one of the beautiful things about these games. One person's ideologies and ideas can differ from the next. But in actuality, this is just my love letter for the game, for the amazing experiences it had given me in those early years, traveling across the UK and Ireland for tournaments, meeting new friends who are still with me today. So what is meta? Now if you're watching this video, you and I and many others are in the same boat. The way the world is now, everyone has access to so much information. If you have a phone, laptop, or lucky enough to have your own PC, it's pretty limitless in what you can accomplish within your own time, within reason of course. I say this to say that the most effective tactic available, aka meta, which by definition isn't that acronym, but it's just an easier way for people to understand the concept of meta, in the sense that meta is just simply being the best. It's what I say has the highest reward for the least amount of investment, hence the most effective tactic available. The meta can be discovered so quickly, so easily. I mean, just doing a quick Google search on how to do X with character will lead you to a plethora of information about said character, as well as the most optimal and perfect way of doing things with said character, if you know where to look. Of course, that has to be stated. So with all of that being said, it's finally time to jump into this. It's time for the anti-air jabs. It's time for the 8 frames of input lag. It's time for Wake Up Nash V-Trigger. It's time for Infiltration Nash vs Tokido Ryu. It's time for Season 1 SF5 Retrospective. Let's go. I was struggling to think of a way to structure this, as doing a whole retrospective on the meta is so broad that, to be honest, this video could go on for hours really. Theory fire for those of you who understand what I'm getting at. So what I have decided to do is show you my journey throughout that season, as I believe it's going to be the easier way for me to kind of structure the video and talk about the aspects that I specifically want to talk about. This video will have a timeline associated with it. The timeline is highlighting all the DLC characters that released within that season. I have done this so that we can have a look at chronologically how the DLCs impacted the meta. As I believe Season 1 is an interesting one because each character that released that year literally shook up the meta, and then like a DLC character would release that would counter the previous DLC. So a lot of shifts were happening just due to the DLC characters. So I think it's going to be a lot more fun to look at it this way rather than just doing a tier list from S tier to C tier or whatever, because it doesn't really show the full picture. Yo, what is up guys? We are back with some more Street Fighter 5. And as you can see in the background, today I'm playing as Cammy. Look at that Ryu's face, man. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna be playing some Cammy. My Cammy is like not that good. So early on it was really a different time for the game. Season 1 was a time for experimentation. Nobody knew how things worked that well. The tournament scene was early. It was a time of just ranked grind. And I mean everybody was on ranked. The race to rank 1, the race to the next. Yo, platinum was a high rank back in the day. Can you believe that, guys? Platinum was like a crazy rank to have, right? So that just shows you how far we have come now. That plat in Season 1 was like, oh yeah, if you're a plat player, you're insane. Very different time for the game. Nobody really knew early on how things worked, how things exactly were meant to be played optimally, etc, etc. So in Season 1 the game was a lot different than it is now due to a couple of reasons. The game had an innate, what people called 8 frames of input lag, input delay, input lag, whatever you want to call it. And this did have a big impact. So me being me, I was a PC player. As you saw from that clip, I actually used to record my ranked sessions when I was ranking up, trying to get to gold. Those are my earliest videos. 7 years ago I made those videos. All I would do is play ranked on my PC, and eventually I got good enough and I started actually going to tournaments. Now I just literally learned how to drive at the time, So what I had done was I drove from Dorset, which is, I don't know if you guys know, I'm going to put up a map. It's in the south of the UK. And then I drove to London. And this was my first time. Like, I had just passed my driving, so I have not actually been out of my county yet. But I had played enough ranked. I started ranking up. A lot of the UK players said, "Oh, come to our locals, bro. We have this thing called Winner Stays On. It's in London. It's in game. Back then, it was in, I believe it was in Shoreditch in the game bunker." So I was like, "All right, sure." So packed up my stuff, packed up my pad, and I drove to London. Luckily, I drove on a Sunday. Funny story, I could not find parking. I had never driven in London. So, oh my God, this is actually insane. I was driving around, trying to find, because I was oblivious to the world. I think I was 18 at the time. So I just drove to London and I thought, yeah, if I just put in this address, I can just park outside. But no, I'm in central London and I'm trying to find parking so that I can make it in time for check-ins. Luckily, I was able to just park outside. Like, I don't know if, I guess all the Londoners know this, but on certain streets, they just have hotels. Like, there's just streets filled with hotels. So, what I ended up doing was on Sundays, you actually don't have to pay for parking. I believe it's like 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. There's no charges or whatever. So luckily I found a spot, parked up quick, ran to a game, just made check-ins, and oh my God, was the game 100% different offline. Completely different experience playing on PC and PS4. And that was the first taste I got of that. I had that experience from season 1. Yeah, it was real. Like, there were certain things I couldn't do, like anti-airing was a lot harder, but it was a very good experience because one thing I'll say is doing that allowed me to finally understand like the difference between someone who just plays casually and high level players. Like, online strategies just would not work. So I played against people like Pax, Jones Arcade, Hurricane was there, I believe Shax was even there, maybe. I mean, a lot of the strong UK players were there. And I lost to Pax. Pax was playing Karen. I still remember this. He was able to just control the pace of the match so well. Like, he was able to slow down my approach to the point where I was just like, man, I really just can't do anything here. Like, so he put me into losers, and then I'm pretty sure I lost to Jones Arcade in losers, and that was just before top 16. So that was my first experience going offline, traveling. And it was just for locals, but because everyone was so good, I just got to understand how to play the game, how to, the other aspects within FGCs that a lot of people don't really talk about. So from that, I'm making this point to say that the early meta of the game was pretty decisive. Like, people knew who was strong early on due to a couple of factors. People who had invincible DPs were strong, people with fast dashes were strong, and the last checklist to make you super strong was having a free frame jab. Because having a free frame jab meant that you had the fastest wake up option in the game, and if you had a meterless reversal with that on top, yeah, you were like S tier, you were like the best of the best of the best of the best. And that was the basics of the meta. Those are the three pillars I would say in season 1 that kind of encompassed everything else. The throw game and the shimmy game was there, yes, but that was more because players were moving from SF4, which I never played, by the way, but was it ground teching OS? I don't even know the name of the option select, but the tech OS. So a lot of players were susceptible to it just due to muscle memory. So shimmies were strong, but the throw strike mix wasn't even really there. It was more of a shimmy, especially due to how throw loops were in the meta. And we'll talk about those certain aspects in specifics soon. But yeah, those three key things were the cornerstones of the meta. Did you have a free frame wake up jab? Did you have a invincible reversal? And did your character have a fast dash? Those were the key pillars in season 1. If we have a look at the earliest tournament results for majors that were happening in 2016, you can see that Infiltration and Tokido were up there. pretty much all the time in grand finals. Now, I think the reason for this is because they stuck to a very simple game plan. When a game's early in its infancy, someone like Tokido chose a Shoto character because he's got those skills from playing years of Akuma. I don't know if he's played Ryu before. I don't really know too much about his history and lineage. I just know he's a sick Akuma player, right? So those fundamentals are going to transfer over into the new game, and that's why I assume he picked him. And then you have Mr. Infiltration, who kind of went for a different approach where he went more of a keep out style. And in season one, Nash was very powerful, like I said, because of the innate frames of lag in the game. It was very hard to check his dash. His V trigger was so strong because you could even use it as a wake up potions if you didn't have perfectly timed knees, for example. Secondly, these skills were kind of, shown how strong they really were by him, I would say. I think Infiltration was the best user of V Trigger early on. I think he really understood how well V skills shut down basic gameplay mechanics within Street Fighter. Like if you look at the game itself, there are so many options to deal with fireballs. Like, just look at Nash's kit. He has so many ways to deal with fireballs. He can throw out his own. He can absorb enemies, and just from that alone, like Infiltration was able to take himself so far into the bracket. And obviously, medium kick sight was pretty good back in season one. I think it was safe, maybe. Like nobody punished it, bro. I think it was actually safe. I think Cammy was the only one who had a punish with Spiral, and it had to be like a really poorly spaced one. So yeah, Nash was crazy in season one for sure, but I think it just was a complementary, situation with Infiltration's playstyles and the game's mechanics blended well together, and that's kind of what formed the basic meta early on. It was still a very Shoto based, still very kind of ground jump, absorb V skill, or counteracting the opponent's offense, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at. So now that we've established kind of what made a character good, so to recap, it was having a 3-frame jab, a meterless reversal, and a fast dash, some way to move in quick. It doesn't even have to be a dash, it's just a strong movement option that's hard to react to, right? So those 3 things are what make a character strong. But then in terms of the actual gameplay within the meta, we had a very fundamental style, because the reason I say this is that Infiltration and Tokido were the ones who are up there. And I'm reiterating this point because this is a retrospective, so we're kind of looking back, and I'm giving my opinion on whether I enjoyed it. And personally, for me, I actually didn't really mind this early phase of the game. There's a couple more things that we're going to move on to now once we get into the still kind of early meta phase. And what I'm going to be talking about now is how the DLC characters weren't really that developed by this point. So we had Alex come out first, and then Gao after a couple of months of the game, and essentially everybody kind of had the same consensus about Alex. He was garbage early on. In comparison to how strong he is now, that boy is crazy now. I hate playing Alex in this day and age because he gets Oki off like everything. But that was his issue back in season one. Like, the guy got Oki off nothing. Like, legit, he had like no Oki whatsoever. So he just had a decent pokes with crouching medium punch. And I remember Problem X actually played him a few times against, I think it was Balrog and a few other characters. But yeah, I think he was doing it more for the high HP to kind of, play that kind of coin flip kind of game. If he has more HP than you, he can take more guesses than you, and you have to kind of hold the guesses because he's gonna have more life, so he can take more chances than you can. And that's just one way to look at it, for example. The second character that was out at this point was Guile. Now, Guile early on, the Guile mains definitely clocked on to how good Guile was. Guile was a very different story in the early chapter because on release, Guile was super, and I mean super strong. Like, in season 1, in my opinion, I would say Chun-Li was the best character because she had a couple of different things. She had the instant air legs. Now, the instant air legs were plus on block. She had insane insane normals. Like her standing heavy punch back in season 1 was actually like just broken. Like it was just like no risk, every reward. And that in conjunction with her fast dash, good Oki, and pretty decent anti-airs as well. Bro, if you played Real Menace in season 1, because I did, that boy was clean. That boy's Chun was crazy, bro. Like, you couldn't jump at him. He had such a good ground game. And then on top of that, his offense with Chun-Li was so strong on top of that, that is why I would, if you guys wanted me to give you guys my opinion on who was the strongest character in season 1, I would say Chun 100%. And it was to the point that Guile was kind of a good matchup for Chun-Li. Can you imagine that? Like, that Guile beats Chun-Li, like, because you would think, Chun-Li has a few options against Fireball. She can use the crouching medium punch to get underneath. She can throw out her own Fireballs. But the key thing is here, the key thing I want you guys to understand about Season 1 Ga and why he was so strong, the input delay made it so hard to react to EX booms. And on top of that, the charge partitioning that Gao used to have to do to get booms was just pretty much non-existent. Like if you played charge characters previously and you played this version of Gao, even me as a person who's never played Gao, I was able to do some just insane zoning with season 1 Gao because his booms were pretty much always meaty. Like his booms were always meaty, and then he had the V skill to give himself the double hitting plus on block light boom with V skill 1. If anyone remembers having to hold that, you know how much BS that was. Especially with the fact that he had insane offense with things like upside down kick. And then even when you did get in, he still had a way to get you out with EX somersault. So yeah, Gao, but I'm not gonna lie to you, it did take a while for people to figure him out, especially his V-trigger. Like a lot of people didn't even know about the loops that quickly, but we're gonna talk about more about V-triggers a bit more once we get into the midpoint in the meta, because that's when characters such as Ibuki came out and Balrog, and those two were definitely V-trigger robbery characters. And I think it was at that point that the meta kind of started changing to a less of a Shoto based kind of game into a more like, yeah, let's build our V skills, let's hit our V-trigger, and let's rob a man. Now I know a lot of people might not like that statement, as they might feel it's kind of an assumption of a lot of different things, but personally, like I said, the way I saw it was people weren't really trying to play that methodical. They were playing a lot of matchups the way they were meant to be played. But I think one key thing to understand is the person who won Capcom Cup 2016 was Nakudu. The guy played Gao and Almika. And he was actually one of the only people that I can remember, apart from Ryan Hart, because I know Ryan Hart had Gal, and then I think he played Gal and Ken in season 1. He was one of the few people that were actually duoing 2 characters and maining 2 characters in one and picking them for the specific matchups. Now you have to ask yourself a question. If I just done that whole segment explaining why, Gal was so strong and Gal players knew how to use him well, if Nakodu is a proficient Gal player, which he was pretty much the best, why do you think he still picked Almika? Is it because he likes Almika? Is it because, he... No, it's because Almika would hit you with forward medium punch, into forward medium punch, mid-screen wall bounce you, and you would have to guess. And if you guessed wrong, you're into another mix-up. And if you guessed wrong again, you're into another mix-up. And you know what I'm trying to get onto here is that, yeah, it's robbery, bro. It's actually insane that we played a game where Almika was allowed. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, that character was the disgrace. I wish I played Almika in season 1, bro. Like, how are we gonna let a character just like wall bounce us mid-screen and do setups and set play whenever they want? It was actually insane. But Nakodu, I think, really understood how well how easy it was to kind of rob people, especially with how good V-trigger was. And there were so many factors into it. People didn't know the setups early on. People's knowledge was not that broad of the game. Everyone was still learning. And yeah, NuckleDu done so well by picking those two specific characters because they would counteract both of their weaknesses. You know, Mika, she didn't have the best ground game, but once she got in, and once she got that hit, she could just end your life. But sometimes there were characters that would just not give her that chance. Like she would just not get that opportunity. So what does he do? He would pick Gao for those moments. You know, maybe for the Chun-Li's, because Chun-Li could zone her out, hit her, poke her out a lot. So he would pick Gao for Chun-Li, for example. And that's just one way to look at it. A lot of you may not agree with this statement about how maybe mid, you know, still early, but the second quarter was a bit more V-trigger focused. I personally see it because a lot of the times the rounds that were basically ending, it just came from someone popping, you know, waking up jab with Nikali into V-trigger, into level 3, into guess, into GG. Or it was Mika, like I said, hits you with a forward medium punch, you have to guess, you get hit with a command grab, it loops, you're done, on to the next GG. Gon was the kind of slow, methodical, throwing fireballs. I'm counteracting your fireball with my V skill. I'm doing all these other things. No, it was kind of very like, yeah, you just had to guess. and it's tough, but that's how I look at it. And you could feel free to disagree. Let me know what you guys think about this second quarter of the meta. Because I still think it's still quite early on, because like I said, a lot of the V-triggers hadn't been that explored just as of yet. For example, Ibuki was released and it took a very long time for people to really understand her bomb setups, or her set play and things like that. So she wasn't really winning any tournaments. The characters that were winning, like I said, were the ones that had those three things, which were wake up jab, fast dash, or fast movement option, and an invincible reversal. So now we move on to the next quarter. The winner of Evo was Infiltration, and runner-up was Fudo with Mika. Totally forgot about that. That was crazy. The Li Joe run, yo, the Li Joe run was hype. The Li Joe run was actually hype as hell. I remember him coming on stage for that one. But yeah, anyways, yeah, this quarter was pretty interesting to kind of see. The meta had pretty much been developed at this point. Everybody knew who was top tier. One thing I haven't really brought into light yet is how good throw loops were. Ken players were having a lot of strength at this time. There was what were they called again? It was like the three, I don't even know what they were called, but there was like three Ken players: Julio Fuentes, Chris Tartarian, and somebody else I can't remember. They were having a blast. Ken was pretty crazy. Ken had throw loops, and he was one of the few characters that had it, and pretty much just for that reason, he was just busted. Because as soon as he got you in the corner, which he could due to his kit was pretty much designed to get you into the corner. You were literally guessing for your life every time he threw you, and if you guessed wrong, you just lost the game. And can you believe that just having a throw loop was enough to take people so far with Ken? A lot of Ken players back in the day, I remember on ranked, people like Halle Bell playing him. He was an experience to play against. And there was a couple of other things that made Ken players really good with their character. They were very good character specialists because they really knew how to push Ken to their limits. And this is the point I'm trying to make. By now, everyone who picked a character, picked a main, stuck with them for a long time, really understood the limits of their character, and they were able to exploit them to the maximum degree and use everything they had within their toolkit and arsenal to basically give them wins. And that is what we're dealing with here in the third part of the meta. It's everybody understands how the game works, and now it's kind of just like, can I push my character further than you can? If I can, I'm more likely to win in the matchup. Personally, for me, I didn't really mind this part of the meta. Like I just thought it was kind of fine. Like I was still playing Cammy. Cammy was still super busted. Cammy, the reason why Cammy was so strong in season one is her EX dive kick was plus at any single range. Now, I didn't really want to go into too many specifics for certain characters because I would make this video. This is what I'm saying. The video could be way too long if I go into too many different things. But like I said, I'm looking at it from my perspective, and I remember playing Cammy. And one of the things that made her super strong in this season was her dive kick. In season 1, Cammy's EX dive kick was plus at any range. Can you believe that? I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back. And everybody was stupid. Like honestly, throw loops, like the balancing in season 1 was absolutely insane. But at this point now, I would say I was enjoying the game a lot more. Um, at this point, I wasn't even like traveling yet, to be honest, because there wasn't. I don't think the Capcom Pro Tour circuit really kicked off for me until 2017. That's when I went to versus fighting and things like that. I was still an online warrior at this point, so I was just kind of watching how all these players play, learning from them, and that's how I was able to kind of understand and grasp how to play specific matchups and characters. And that's how a lot of people go about it even today, and that's how a lot of people will go about it with SF6, I believe. But overall, the third quarter of the season, and in terms of the meta overall, I didn't mind it too much. I was having a lot of fun on ranked. It's just everybody was so stupid. And in terms of the DLC characters I released, Jury, nobody rated her. I think Infiltration actually tried to play her a few times, and he actually, I think he did win with her, but maybe that might have been season 2. I can't actually remember. I think Infiltration did actually try and play Jury at one point. It didn't work out. But Jury kind of fit the same playstyle as Nash. He was basically playing Jury the same way as he did Nash. And the only reason why Jury was even decent was because of her dash. If it wasn't for Jury's dash, she would have like she would not exist in season 1, honestly. Like nobody picked her. She was really bad. Um, I never was a big fan of Jury, so I can't even elaborate onto why I never tried her. I just don't really like her design or anything, so I never found her too interesting. And then if we go ahead and look at the other character that released, which was Urian around mid-September or the end of September, he was having a he wasn't really having a good run. A lot of people couldn't really see like figure out all of his mirror stuff. Like there was so much to figure out with Urian, and it was only until somebody like RB came into the frame that we started really seeing how well um, Urian could do. But that was so much farther down the line, and it wasn't something that happened straight away. And that's kind of what I'm trying to reiterate with this point. It's this part of the this quarter of the meta. It was all based on if you stuck with your characters and you were able to push them to the maximum, which is why those players were winning. So now that we've reached the final quarter, I think it's safe to say that we've hopefully all understood how unbalanced this game was in the first season. Like this game was absolutely crazy to play. It was a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I do not envy any of the pro players playing in this season. Like honestly, playing against an Almika, playing against a Cammy with EX dive kick plus at any range. Yeah, no, there was a lot going on this season, and I am very excited to see how the balancing of SF6 is on release. Just playing the beta, the game is somewhat balanced, I would say, but obviously, as always, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be cheap, a lot of things that are going to be broken early on that people figure out. And in this day and age with the internet, it's going to be shared and everyone's going to know about it, unless they're a pro player. The reason I say that is because if it's actually pretty good tech, the pro player is going to save it for a tournament. He's going to bring it out when it counts, when money's on the line, when points are on the line. That is when he's going to show all that madness is. And that would be the key in victory, I would say, in this upcoming game. I'm going to be very interested to see. It's going to be crazy. Because now that I'm not on FGC newbie anymore and I kind of know where all the resources are, Yeah, is this game gonna be figured out within the first week? Do you know what I mean? Like, is the meta gonna be figured out so quickly? Especially with how many people I know are gonna be jumping on this game. Everyone's hyped for six. So many people are on board as well. Like, it's actually gonna be such a crazy early season when SF6 drops, and I cannot wait. I really just cannot wait. But anyway, back onto SF5 for the final quarter of the year. There's not much to say, like I've already said earlier, as pretty much at this point, Knuckle was dominating. He knew how to push Gal and Almika to the maximum, I would say. He picked them for the right matchups, and I think he knew the meta so well early on because nowadays, when you think about it, a lot of people do play multiple characters. Like, if you look at the SF leagues and um, just even look at IDOM, like one of our most recent ones, he plays Poison and Laura and I think somebody else as well. Like, Dewey was so smart by picking two characters early on, and I think that was the key that let him kind of push forward in the whole process of winning lots of things. And eventually, he ended up winning the whole goddamn thing, and he won and became Capcom champion. So for that, I would say Dewey was the main guy who knew what was going on in the meta. And just looking back at it overall, yeah, I do not envy anyone playing in that pro circuit that year. That's crazy. Can you imagine traveling to like Las Vegas and you just get hit by like forward medium punch and just get command grabbed four times in a row and lose? Like that probably happened to somebody, you know. But yeah, anyway, let me stop hating on Amika. Let me wrap this video up. Let me say, if you guys enjoyed this, please don't hesitate to subscribe, leave a like. It took a lot of time to make this video, and yeah, I'd really appreciate if you just could take the time to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of this kind of style. If you enjoyed it, if you want more of these, because part two could drop, but hey, I ain't dropping it if nobody likes this. I'm not gonna lie to you, you know, it's just how it goes. So let me know down below if you guys are rating this and want to see more by leaving a like. But other than that, it's been me, Poizesto, signing out. Peace out, guys.